Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome home. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend with me. I am so grateful. As always, we have a great show lined up for you. We are starting in Ghana, where the country has more than 7,000 confirmed coronavirus cases. And despite a robust response, the numbers remain stubbornly high. So we're going to be digging into what comes next and speaking to a leading infectious diseases expert who also happens to be playing a role with the COVID task force formed by the Africa CDC. We're going to get her thoughts on how to move forward through this pandemic. Also on the show, what we have learned from this moment in time is how interconnected we are. A virus that first made its appearance in Wuhan, China, has touched just about every part of the world. And we know now more than ever that we have to come together to make it through this moment. We're going to be talking to Nigeria's former finance minister. She's also an African Union special envoy to mobilize international support. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala will join us from Washington, D.C. to discuss what Africa needs in terms of help to make it through this pandemic. And as always, we have the bright side, which is how we try and end every show. And today we have an extra special treat. My dear friend and former CNN colleague Zain Verji will be here with us. We're going to be talking about life in quarantine, reinvention, and just generally enjoying her delightful spirit. You won't want to miss it. It's going to be a treat, I promise you. Lots to get through. Let's get started. All right, so let's talk about Ghana then, shall we? More than 7,000 confirmed cases and about 34 recorded deaths so far in that country, according to Johns Hopkins University. Ghana has been leading the way in the use of innovation to battle this deadly virus and has been robust in its testing and has made great headway. But as I said a few moments ago, the numbers remain stubbornly high, and we're going to take a look at the overall response. Joining us now to break things down is an infectious disease specialist, Dr. Bertha Sewa Ayi. She's part of the African CDC COVID-19 task force, the private sector group of that, and she's done extensive work around COVID and also looking at smallpox immunology. She also has a weekly TV show in Ghana. She has a lot going on. She has a lot of expertise, and I'm glad she's joining us now from Sioux Falls in South Dakota. Dr. Ayi, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Aisha. It's nice to see you, and thank you to your audience for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's start with the fact that, Ghana has more than 7,000 confirmed cases, and the testing. I mean, nobody can deny that Ghana has mounted a robust response, particularly on the testing front. But the numbers still, they're still where they are, and then they say the trend is going downwards, but they're still stubbornly high. What's your assessment of the efforts so far?
Well, so far, the efforts, as you can tell, has been outstanding. Ghana was one of the few countries that stopped travelers from coming in, and actually government officials from traveling as well. And our airports were praised for the extensive testing and questionnaires that was done when someone alighted. And between March 19th and 21st, the government just stopped everybody from traveling. And during that time, the 1,000 and something travelers that came in just during those 48 hours were quarantined. And out of that, we had a positive test result of 10.5%, meaning about 115 of those travelers tested positive. So I think that was an extremely useful initial response. Those people got treated, and after that, we haven't had any more importation. So now there's community transmission. Now, our lab, which is the Noguchi lab, was one of the first labs that started testing for COVID-19. And now we've expanded to about 7 countries with a plan to expand, not countries, but 7 testing centers with a plan to involve another 35. The hospitals that take care of patients have been really pepped up. The government is planning to build 88 hospitals just specifically for infections. And then they're also planning to build a Ghana CDC, which we haven't had in the past. I know Nigeria has one. And our treatment, we've been updating our treatment guidelines. And recently, convalescent plasma has been submitted to the Ghana FDA for approval as well. So I think on all fronts, the country is doing excellent. And when I think about it, I mean, as a continent, Africa is probably where China was in the early part of January. And to put it in context, by March 14th, the US had over just about 200 and something cases. And in 5 weeks, they were in the hundreds of thousands. The same thing applies to Europe. It takes about 5 weeks to get into the hundreds of thousands and millions. And to think that Ghana, for example, today marked exactly 77 days or 11 weeks into our first case, and we have 7,000. I mean, that's really, really good. And if you take Africa as a whole, we haven't quite hit 100,000 yet, and we're recording about 4,000 cases a day. And if you look back, this is where China was at the end of, its highest peak ever. So for some strange reason, the disease is not picking up as much. You don't have as many people dying. So, for example, over the last 48 hours, 101 people died on the whole continent. And you usually start worrying when you have 1,000 cases of people dying a day like you had in Italy. US got to a point where 3,000 people were dying. I almost cried that day. Then you know you're in trouble. So I think so far, the outlook looks really, really good for Ghana and for Africa if we keep putting our mitigating strategies in place.
So we have 125,640 confirmed cases. Of those, 70,000 are active on the continent right now. You talk about Ghana and where they're at, and certainly they've been praised by multiple individuals and bodies. But the Africa CDC boss, John Nkengasong, just a couple of hours ago, has come out and said he does have concern, not specifically about Ghana, but about the continent as a whole, about this issue of community spread, which, as you pointed out, is now present in Ghana, and saying that we have to change the protocols for testing, because the concern is that community spread is actually what we will see an acceleration. What leads you to have the confidence that that acceleration won't take place in Ghana, even though we already have community spread there?
Well, we had used the Africa CDC had used some WHO data to say that they used April 23rd as a benchmark, that in 100 days, if certain mitigating strategies are not put in place, then we could even have 100 million cases. But if you look at that trajectory of that logarithmic curve that they put together, we haven't hit that expectation, because I think a lot of countries are being proactive. And the fact that Africa CDC, so February 22nd, the African heads of state got together and formed this task force with 6 specific strategies. 1, surveillance. 2, laboratory network. They have something that they call PACT, a plan to test a lot. Exactly. And then the case management, where I'm part of the case management technical working group. And the fact that we have an education component that is educating a lot of physicians on a weekly basis. And I think the heightened awareness is also helping. The thing that we have to watch out is education. Community spread is going on because there's still some people, there's so many languages in Africa. In Ghana alone, there are over 120 languages. So it's the penetration of the communication that is the key, because for the English-speaking people who are getting information on a daily basis through all the TV networks, they are responding appropriately. People are putting on their mask, they're undertaking the social distancing that is needed. But as you know, Africa has a lot of people together at one time. In fact, I used to estimate that when the disease gets to Africa, the R0 or the basic reproductive number will go up to 50 versus 2.5 to 3, because you have so many people huddled against each other. But overall, considering that we're almost 77 days into this and our numbers are still 7,000 for Ghana, I take a little comfort. What makes me nervous is that concern that they're thinking about opening schools and churches. I mean, I think that's not a good idea, because even here in the US, I don't know if you know this, but the CDC reported just last week on the 19th of May that a church in Arkansas opened up. They had been closed. They opened up the first week. One pastor and his wife they exposed about 95 people.
This is where the singing was happening, right? This is where... Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, opening churches and schools, I don't think it's a good idea. So I mean, I still feel very comfortable
So
overall that people are watching, but we need to make sure that we keep up the progress that we have made. So it's more of the next few steps might determine where we go.
And so, as you talk about the case of, or certainly the concerns you have around schools being reopened and congregations, religious congregations and the like, as an infectious diseases expert, what is the right way to open up in Africa? Forget about what they're doing out in the West. How do we walk that path?
Well, I think for the schools, they might have to find a staggered way of going to school. The way schools are crowded and people sit together, that is a pattern for disaster. I also think the churches need to, if they will at all, at a very small capacity, or at best, they should not open. I know they are agitating for that, but I know we need religion, but we need our lives. I almost think that this having churches closed for a while has been a lifesaver for most people because they would have contracted the disease in these crowded settings, especially in churches where people sing. It's been proven that when they have their choir rehearsals, because of the volume of moisture that is being released, there's a high risk of transmission. So I think that the churches should seriously wait. This is not ordinary times. We're at war. If we're at war, people don't go to church. You do what you can to stay at home until you get over the whole outbreak.
And Dr. As someone who has looked at smallpox immunology, what do you see from smallpox that gives you some insight into this pandemic and this virus?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was studying vaccines. I'm thinking we need to find a solution for this. So I went back to look at smallpox. And it's interesting that currently it's only Russia and the US that still have stocks of the smallpox virus. And the US has enough vaccines to vaccinate all Americans if there should be an outbreak. And it turns out that the smallpox vaccine doesn't actually contain smallpox at all. So in the 1700s, when smallpox had been killing people with a 30% mortality rate, this physician called Dr. Edward Jenner, he made an interesting observation. Well, he and others, but he wrote his down. The people who were infected with cowpox were not getting infected with smallpox. In fact, the farmers and the milkmaids will get these mild little blisters on their hands, but they never caught smallpox. And so at that time, they had started something called virulation, meaning they take the fluid from a smallpox infected person and give it to somebody who doesn't have it. Then they get a mild disease and they become immune. He decided to take the fluid from one of his housemates and put it on a 9-year-old boy who had been exposed to cowpox. And that individual didn't get ill at all. So then started the whole issue of vaccination. So it's this vaccinia virus that led to the term vaccination. And it was the first disease to be eradicated with a vaccine. It was the first disease to which a vaccine became available. So how does this relate to COVID-19 in Africa? If you look at the US right now, you realize that even though African Americans make up only about on average 13 to 20% of most townships, they're making up 80% of those who die. So it's not a matter of the color. It means there's something else in Africa that is preventing the disease from taking so much root. You take Ghana, for example, 77 days in and only 34 people have died. Short of the fact that they're not counting well, it means that somehow the population has something in their system that is preventing them from either showing up the disease or a severe form. So I have just postulated, it's not written anywhere, although I've added it to one of the papers I wrote, that I think that somehow, I think either Ghanaians or Africans in general, they may have been exposed to a particular virus and we don't know which one because we're not measuring or we don't even know which one to measure. That has somehow produced some antibodies that is preventing a lot of people from manifesting the severe forms of the disease.
Interesting. Again, so many theories right now. The brilliant thing about this show is that in real time, our viewers can be involved in the conversation. And I do want to put this question from Zainab Bangura to you. You've talked about schools reopening. You've talked about your hesitation around churches reopening. Zainab Bangura wants to know, what are your thoughts on reopening airports and the airspace in Africa?
Well, the airports and airspace are very, very controlled conditions. I think if I recollect, You can control how many people get onto a flight. The issue is going to be whether they can break even when you have 3 spaces between individuals. People will be required to wear masks. And they can even do, now that we have antibody tests, which by the way are not perfect, you can even throw that in where everybody gets a test before they get on board within 45 minutes or so. But I believe that can be done. The thing that I would not want to see happen is a lot of importation of disease. It would have to be intra-African, and people would have to be very careful because Aisha, I don't know if you remember this, but February 14th, a Chinese traveler brought the disease to Egypt, and then Nigeria, February. I mean, if Africa had closed its borders mid-January, we would have 0 cases, believe me, at this time. So
you truly believe that would have?
Oh, I honestly believe it, because we've done studies in population. Like Ghana has always had a little bit of study on coronaviruses, and we know, of course, we didn't have the DNA, but we didn't pick these any of these coronaviruses up, and nobody had been ill. And at every WHO briefing, somebody would ask, when is the disease going to get to Africa? Why is Africa quiet? And really, we didn't until we started importing disease from all over the world. And so I think that we would have to be very, very careful. It has to be extremely essential travel. Other than that, I would say people should stay put, because like I said, if we look at the analogy of the fact that we're at war and that these are not ordinary times, then people will stay put. What really bothered me was February and March, when people were still traveling for tourism trips to India, South Africa. I mean, South Africa's disease was brought in by a bunch of 15 tourists from Italy. I mean, that was just wrong. That was just wrong. I mean, and I don't know how to stop people from traveling when there's not a ban. I mean, someone will still feel, well, I can take a leisure trip.
Yeah, no, listen, this is the reality, that we have to take the steps to protect our populations. And I think the question of air travel is one that has to be looked at very, very closely as to the benefit of leisurely, non-essential travel at a time like this. Dr. Bertha Soa-Ayi, such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much. Be safe.
Same here. I will. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Let's take a look at the picture on the continent right now in terms of cases and countries leading the way in various regions. Let's, as always, start with the total number of confirmed cases. Let's get that up on screen for you. Big picture. This is where we are currently. 125,966 confirmed coronavirus cases. Of those, as you see, 70,513 are active. When you look at confirmed deaths, 3,724. Let's drill down for the regional view, starting in Northern Africa and Egypt, leading the way there, still out in front in the region. Egypt now, 19,666 confirmed cases, well approaching 20,000. Number of deaths, 816. The government in Egypt increasingly coming under fire, facing accusations that they're being heavy-handed in trying to stifle all criticisms around their response. In Algeria, the second most impacted country in North Africa, as you see there, 8,997 confirmed cases, number of deaths, 630. That regime also facing accusations of using COVID as a cover to snuff out long-running protests against the political establishment there. Also, keep an eye on Morocco, because the numbers there are increasing fast. 7,636 cases in Morocco, deaths recorded 202. Moving down to Central Africa, where Cameroon remains the most impacted country in the region. The number of confirmed cases, 5,436. As you look at the number of deaths there, some 69. DRC, the violence is continuing there, and all of this makes for, in fact, if we look at DRC, all of this makes for some concern in terms of the number of cases, 2,660. I want to turn to West Africa and Nigeria, which is reopening. The numbers continue to surge. Total confirmed cases in Nigeria, 8,733. Total number of deaths in Nigeria, 254. Ghana, we were just talking about Ghana. You heard from Dr. Ayi there. She feels pretty good about where things stand there, even though they have over 7,000 cases. But the number of deaths, 34. My home country of Sierra Leone, 812 confirmed cases, deaths, as you see in Sierra Leone. Deaths in Sierra Leone are some 45. In East Africa, Sudan's numbers continue to climb. There is concern about Sudan. 4,346 recorded deaths in Sudan, 195. Worth pointing out that 3 imprisoned ministers that belong to Omar al-Bashir's regime, so ex-ministers, are in prison and have tested positive for coronavirus. They're currently being quarantined in Khartoum. We continue to watch the situation in Sudan. Somalia is also a huge source of concern given the violence and the instability and displacement, all of which are enemies to trying to get a disease under control. Total confirmed cases in Somalia, 1,828. The number of deaths, 72. And let's finish up in the southern half of the continent. South Africa, another day, another staggering number to bring you. As you see there, 25,000 cases and counting, 25,937 in South Africa. Number of deaths now 552. Zambia, numbers are creeping up there. 1,057 confirmed cases in Zambia. Deaths registered 7. The nation's health minister is now infected with the virus. And Malawi, I want to tell you about Malawi because even though the number is low, relatively, 203 as you see there, and the number of deaths 4. It's being reported that I think it was more than 100 people in Malawi escaped from a quarantine center, and now authorities are trying to round them up. So more than 100 people escaped from a quarantine center in Malawi, and now they're trying to round them up. Current cases in Malawi over 200. We shall see what happens next. As always, we ask you to send us your thoughts because we want you to be part of the conversation in real time. So while it's happening, send us your thoughts, send us your comments, what you make of the conversation, your questions, your views. We want to hear that. Send them to us. You can send them via Facebook, or you can also send us videos about how this moment is affecting you, how this pandemic is impacting your life. Give us your name, where you're from, and what you do for a living. Send it to homewithaisha@gmail.com. Send us your videos. We want to hear from you. That's the reason I'm doing this show, so that we can all be part of the conversation. So I look forward to hearing from you. Send it via email or send it to our Facebook page. You can send to our Facebook page, Home with Isha Sesay. That's the Facebook page. Send us your comments, send us your videos. We want to hear from you. All right, let's move on. All right, so we are awaiting our next guest, which is, or who will be rather, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who's joining us from Washington to talk about the response to COVID, and she's part of the African Union's envoy team looking to mobilize international support. We are waiting for her to join us, but in the meantime, let's get some of your comments in. Lots of people writing in. I want to say thank you for that. Where are you writing in from? Let me go to the top. Amadou Bailaba, who's writing in from Accra, Ghana. Also, Omar Jabi from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you so much for being with us. Also getting a hello from London, Jennifer M. Tengbe. Lots of people in the house from all over the place. Laurie Jesselo Laws says hi. Good afternoon from Charlotte. From Jessie Bennett Laws also. In fact, she was saying hi to her mum. It's a reunion on our Facebook page. Lots of people watching. Adam McSeel, Zainab Bangura is here. Teddy Sakor, Brahma Lantana, who's talking about efforts in Ghana and the repatriation of some folks from Kuwait. Jimmy's asking, is the continent testing enough? That is a long-standing question. I don't think anyone would say we're testing enough. We need more tests, but access to testing kits and reagents is proving to be problematic. And that is one thing that we want to talk to Dr. Okonjo-Iweala about. Zainab Bangura picks up the point of sensitization and how important that is. And I think that really goes to the point that Dr. Ai was making, that when it comes to the many languages in play on the continent, we have to find ways of sensitizing the populations in the languages that they understand. We can't make communication, we can't place it solely through mass media, through English or the dominant languages. You have to meet people where they are. So that means going down to the local languages. That means it means radio, it means plays, it means songs, it means any which way that is effective in communicating a message. That's what we need to be doing on the continent. Because essentially we cannot wait for a vaccine. Largely because we don't know when a vaccine is going to be found, efficacy, safety, manufacturing, scaling up, delivery, and when will it get to Africa? So we can't be predicating our efforts on, oh, we'll just wait for a vaccine. We have to change our behavior right now. And that we know can control the spread of this virus. And to do so, we do need that sensitization piece. We do need that communication piece to be sharper. So we're also looking at what else is being said here. Teddy Sacco says, I always say this, Africa's problem is its multilinguistic nature. Brian Melancina says, I think the then government of Ghana did very well in improving the health sector in Ghana. Saidi Suarez says, Ghana is arguably the gateway to West Africa. Based on your projection and understanding of the virus so far, when do you think it will be ideal to open your airport to the region and the world by extension? Which is referencing the airport comment that was made by Zainab Bangura, which I think Dr. Ayi did a good job of explaining. Lots of people referencing this airport position. I would love to know from wherever you are on the continent, how do you feel about airports reopening in your country? Is it something you want to see happen? Is it something you're against? Share your thoughts on that specifically, and it would just be good to get your perspective. Mohammed B. Fofana is writing in from Sierra Leone. Hello from Sierra Leone. Ajab Mohammed Jabi. Yes, it's going down a political road, so we're going to leave that one there. And John Hollis says, watching from Florida, Fairfax, everybody who is watching, I want to say thank you to you. And also ask you once more to send in your videos. And let us know how you are experiencing this moment in your country. Let us know. We want to know. We want to know exactly what you are seeing, what you are hearing, and the challenges that you may be facing. That's really important to us. While we await Dr. Okonjo Iweala, we want to bring you another story, this one coming out of Ghana. And again, this one coming out of Ghana, but this one is a very, very special story. This is a story about a man who is 95 years young and is doing his part to make a difference in this very difficult moment that is affecting so many people. Because really there are two types of people in the world. There are those who are doers and there are those who are sayers. And our next guest is a man who's a doer. He has put his mind to doing something, and he's out there converting his words into action. I'm talking about Private Joseph Hammond, who's a World War II veteran. He was a member of the Gold Coast Regiment of the Royal West African Frontier Force, a group that fought alongside the British in World War II. And his commitment didn't stop when the war ended. In fact, in this moment, he has recommitted himself to saving people, to saving humanity. Take a look at his effort, an effort to make a difference at 95 years young. Take a look.
Mr. Hammond, how are you feeling this morning?
Fine, terrific.
Sure?
Terrific. I'm not a pessimist, but optimist. I have seen the donations coming in, and I'm appealing to everybody in Africa to contribute so that we will have a colossal sum of money to help the frontline people. This is what I want. Derek, you can see that I'm okay. Look, yes. Maybe I'm trotting. I'm trotting. My hands on my back, sir. Greetings, sir.
Are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
So Private Hammond, Abeku Santana, third day, let's go.
Thank you.
Nice and easy.
The clock is at home, right? Wonderful. No way that our instructor shall be open and college. You were instructed. A couple of days later, we learned that there were other two. We didn't get to see.
Private Hammond. 6 miles in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done, Private Hammond. Well done. 6 miles. 6 miles. There you go. How do you feel?
Glory to the Lord. Thank you, Jesus.
And did you enjoy your walk today?
Perfect. You know the man who motivated me?
Who?
My brother Abeku Santana. He is a kingdom. He made my work so nice, beautiful, and I don't feel anything. I'm not tired at all. If people like you are condoming me always, I can walk about 10 miles. I'm sorry, I can walk about 50 miles.
Well, inspired by UK captain who's raising money by walking in his garden, Private Hammond is doing the same thing as you saw there, walking 2 miles a day for a week to raise money for PPEs for COVID-19 workers and the vulnerable in Ghana, for vulnerable African veterans. He joins me now from Accra to talk about his efforts. Private Hammond, welcome.
Thank you.
It is
Hello, Isha. I'm extremely happy to see you.
I am extremely happy to see you. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing in this moment. It's just incredible. Are you surprised by how many people have come out to support you?
Yeah. Well, I would like to say, please endeavor at your level best to help me to raise funds, colossal amount of money, not only Africa, but the whole world. Because the COVID-19 is the whole world, not Africa alone. So I'm appealing to everybody. Little drops of water makes a mighty ocean. So the little that you can contribute, at the end of the day, is going to be a very colossal amount of money to help the frontline people, doctors, nurses, everybody involved, corporate organizations. I'm appealing to all of you to help to raise the money.
Private Hammond, at 95, is it hard, this walking that you're doing? Is it difficult for you?
I'm as strong as a fiddle. I'm very strong. And I can walk 10 miles again. I don't worry at all. I'm very strong. By the grace of the Lord, He gives me the strength. I pray quietly in my head, and so I continue to do this thing. So I believe fervently that I will succeed.
And you saw the UK captain doing this fundraising effort, and that's how you decided to do this. Tell me more.
Yes, Sir Tom Moore. Now it's 90. So he said, Tom Moore said. So I honestly, when I saw what he did, it inspired me a great deal. Being a veteran himself that fought in Burma, I also did the same thing. So I said, why not? If somebody has done it at approximately 100 years, I'm also 95. Why can't I also do it to help the people in Africa? So I am back on this work. I believe fervently that what he did actually inspired me. It motivated me to do it. God being so good, I've been able to achieve my aim. And I'm prepared to go further.
And how much further are you prepared to go, Private Hammond?
I tend to hit the 30 miles. I've done 14 miles now. This is the first phase. The second phase, I'm embark on it next week. And I'm going to do it. I will walk about 16 miles to add up to the 14, making 30 miles.
Make 30 miles.
I want you to feel very proud.
I am tremendously proud, and everybody who's watching is proud, and they want to know how to donate, Private Hammond. We will get that information. Do you know off the top of your head how we can give money to support?
Okay, UK, everybody, all over the world, I'm appealing. I'm not leaving anybody. Ministers, government officials, everybody involved. The little that they can afford to do it, I'll be very happy.
So we will post that information on our page so that people know where to send contributions. Private Hammond, for the young people who are watching, what do you want to say to them to encourage them to also stand up and help in this moment?
I thank you. This question is very good. You see, if I, at the age of 95, have been able to do this, what about the 20, 25, 30? I want all of them to involve, to do it, because I'm doing it for everybody, especially the young ones too. So they have to emulate me to do the same thing. I hope they can do it, you know? So please, whatever you can afford to give. I'm raising funds to hit, actually, from the inception, I wanted everybody to get the fund about $600,000. 500,000 is equivalent pounds. So if I'm able to read that, I'll be able to, so that we buy the equipment, gloves, everything for the frontline people. Without the money, we can't do anything. So I'm appealing. I'm appealing.
And this isn't just for the PPEs, it's also for vulnerable veterans, right?
Yes, vulnerable veterans too. It is very good. You know, these people are feeble. Some of my colleagues are 98, 97, and so forth. I'm 95. I mean, within their distance. So please, you do it. Whoever does it, the Lord will help him. The Lord will bless him to do it. We want to eradicate completely the COVID-19 from the face of Africa. So I'm determined to do it.
And how do you feel in terms of the response there in Ghana, the government response to COVID-19? You've been watching it, you've lived many years and seen many things. How is it going, the response?
Oh, they are doing extremely well. They have been contributing and everything they are doing. You see, so I want everybody to do it. The government is doing marvelously well. Marvelously well.
But Private Hammond, I do believe that people who have your seniority in age, you're supposed to be staying at home. So I want to make sure that you're staying safe.
Safe. I'm strong. Yes, I'm strong. You know the reason, when the heart, this is everything. That keeps me going. When somebody offends you, forgive the person. And you keep it that way, because if you don't forgive, we always pray that God forgive us. So if somebody offends you, why don't 2 minutes forget about it and you keep moving? You see, this is a secret. If you want to stay alive, to achieve an old age, please, everybody must learn to forgive. Even Jesus said, when somebody slaps you, somebody asks the question. It says 7 times, 10 here, 7 times. It does not mean that you are a lunatic. It means forgiveness. That's all.
You're right, Private
Yes, but proverbial talk. Jesus said, tell this, it means peace always is good.
Before I let you go, your family, they're in support of you walking another 16 miles?
They are happy. That depends on myself, not them. I'm doing it. You see, I cannot ask somebody permission before I do it. I'm doing wholeheartedly from my heart. It is me who will walk, not them.
Private Hammond, it's such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so, so much. We ask you to be safe while you're doing this. We are all so proud of you. And we thank you for the lessons that you've given us about forgiveness and how we all have to do our part. We are going to get your information so we can share it for how people can donate. We will all donate to support you.
Thank you.
All right.
I believe you will lead the way. Others will follow. Thank you very much.
I will do my part. Thank you. Thank you so much, Private Hammond. Thank you.
Thank you too. And God bless. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a special soul. You're a very special soul. Thank you, Private Hammond. Thank you. What a special man. What a special man who is doing an incredible thing in this moment. And your comments out here, I just want to share how so many of you were touched by what he is doing. So many hearts, so many comments. Rick SIE says, this is fantastic. I'm about half of his age, but cannot even walk as far as he does. You might want to look into that, Rick. Also, lots of people saying that just Teddy Sakor, indeed, he's right. People saying we need to learn how to forgive in reference to what he had to say. Jennifer says, learn how to forgive. And Barry Sununu, these are comments also very important. All of you saying so many good things and just lots of emojis, lots of applause. Everybody supporting Private Hammond there. We're going to get his details so that we can add them to the page. Let's do the 5 stories that we are keeping an eye on for you at this point in time. We're keeping an eye on 5 big stories from the continent that we will continue to update for you in the hours ahead. Let's run through those for you. Also, starting in Ghana, there is a lot of Ghana on today's show, as you can take note. Ghana's opposition MPs are basically expressing some reservations about Parliament restarting. They are watching the announcements being made about MPs and parliamentary staff getting tested, with a view to that being the gateway to sessions, starting once more. And they're saying not so fast. They are asking for a break. They're saying that they should resort to virtual sittings for now until the situation is fully under control. Ghana, as you know, has 7,000 confirmed cases. Nigeria is also a place we're watching very closely for you, especially after the words from the president of Nigeria's Medical Association, Francis Faduyele, who is challenging the official count of confirmed coronavirus cases, saying that he feels that the actual true number is far greater than what has been acknowledged. Nigeria has over 8,000 cases, and this is what Faduyele said in an interview with the BBC. He said, we are worried because the number that we have declared is still a far cry from the total number we have or we expect. As it is, we know we'll have nothing less than 4 times the total number than we have as it is. Now, remember, Nigeria has over 8,000 cases currently, and the head of Nigeria's Medical Association is positing that they will have 4 times that number in reality. And he says, we have so many patients who have shown signs of COVID-19, and we're waiting for 3 to 5 days before we see their results. So it means we have a lot of backlog. Deeply concerning, especially as Nigeria continues to move towards reopening. The cases in the north continue to mount, as you know. Kano itself fast approaching 1,000 cases. A presidential task force is looking into the situation in northern Nigeria, but you hear there from Nigeria's Medical Association president that he believes that the numbers in that country, Africa's most populous nation, are far greater than the current 8,000 plus confirmed cases. Turning to Africa CDC and their warning of an increase in community spread on the continent. We were just talking about that with Dr. Bertha Ayi, and the concern is that community spread, which is really the term used to describe infections that come about without traveling abroad or known exposure to a confirmed coronavirus case. This is when the disease is now just in the community and people are getting infected. That has been the worst case scenario that Africa CDC has warned against. And now we're in a place where they say they're seeing increasing evidence of this kind of spread on the continent, and they're also particularly worried about Ethiopia. So Africa's CDC boss, John Nkengasong, who we've had on the show, is calling for a new strategy for testing to prevent more cases. He says it's time to test people with flu-like symptoms, increase mask wearing, and step up hand washing. You remember that initially the guidelines around testing had been people who were known to have traveled or known to have come into contact with people who were sick. Now they're saying, according to Africa's CDC boss, test people with flu-like symptoms. This is where they're going now because they are concerned at the uptick in community spread. I want to talk to you about Senegal. That's another story we're watching for you. Senegal, despite the fact that I've got the results in from a number of studies from around the world on hydroxychloroquine. And of course, we know what President Trump has said. It's his COVID drug of choice. But we have all this data that's come in the last few weeks that says that hydroxychloroquine is not effective against COVID-19. And more than that it carries a high risk of heart arrhythmias, irregular heartbeat, and can lead to death. A number of studies have come out and said that in recent weeks. But what we're getting from Senegal is that they are going to stay the course and continue to use hydroxychloroquine as part of their treatment regimen for COVID-19. This is being reported by Agence France Press. They spoke to Abdoulaye Boussou, who heads Senegal's Center of Health Emergency Operations, and they're quoting him as saying that they'll continue to use hydroxychloroquine for consenting patients. Must be said, there's no confirmation from Senegal's health ministry or the head of Senegal's COVID-19 response that is indeed the way they'll go. But that is the word we're getting from one health official in Senegal, that they will continue to use hydroxychloroquine. We have heard that from some other countries as well. The data is in. The data is in that this thing not only doesn't work, but it is dangerous. But, we'll continue to follow that. So a final story that we're watching very closely out of Africa is Kenya. The Kenyan president coming out and admitting that one of his two sons, he didn't say which one, had flouted the strict curfew and restrictions on movement in that nation and basically went for a night of partying in Mombasa. He has come out and said this. It has, of course, as you'd expect, drawn a huge amount of criticism because, generally speaking, Kenya has been quite forceful in maintaining the restrictions of movement, and people who are known to have broken the curfew have been placed in quarantine, which is not a fate that met the president's son. President Uhuru Kenyatta said that he gave his son a dressing down. But no quarantine for the president's son. People in Kenya pointing to what really on the face of it is a double standard, but we are watching the situation to see what comes next. All right, full transparency, we've had some technical problems with getting Dr. Ngozi Nkonjo-Iweala on the show. We wanted to bring her to you so we could hear her view on the African Union's efforts to mobilize international support for the COVID effort. We have had a number of technical problems and we can't get that going. It's the joy of this moment, technical challenges everywhere. So we're going to move on and talk to you about the bright side. Because for everything that is going on and those woeful numbers that I gave you at the top of the show that shows Africa has more than 100,000 confirmed coronavirus cases. That is heavy, that is challenging, and we're all concerned about that. But every day on the show, we try and end on a bright note because we need to keep our hope going. We need to keep our hope alive. It is the only way we will make it through this. And so every day on the show, we bring you someone who is in quarantine like I am and share with you what they're going through, what they're experiencing. Today's Brightside guest is the one and only friend of the show, acclaimed journalist, entrepreneur, so many things. Most importantly, my friend, Zain Verjee. She is our Brightside guest, and we caught up with her earlier to get a sense of what she's up to in quarantine. Take a look.
Good morning. Aisha, why are you making me do this first thing in the morning? This is what I actually look like no makeup, haven't brushed my hair yet, have just had my morning cup of coffee, and I'm trying to motivate myself to get off this very comfortable sofa. What have I been doing in quarantine? I've been reading a lot, Aisha. I just finished reading All the Light We Cannot See, which is one of the most beautifully written books that I've read. I was crying at every chapter just because of the sentence construction and how amazing it was. Now I'm reading a detective novel. I'm checking a lot of things off the list here. Journey Under the Midnight Sun, the same guy, a Japanese author who wrote Suspect X. And of course I have the love of my life next to me. Luca, you're live on Isha's show. You're live on Isha's show, my love. What do you want to say? What do you want to say to her?
Hi, Aisha. How are you? I miss you. Give me food. Give me money. Stay safe and healthy. Luca.
Thanks, my love. As you know, I'm on marathon phone calls soon after this. I'll be going for a run to try and stay in shape and keep my head clear. And then I'll look for a cap so I can hide some of the little colors that are starting to emerge at the top of my head. But quarantine has been interesting, Aisha. We've launched a lot of things. You have, at least. While we're at home. It's amazing how innovative we can be when we have nothing to do. What else am I doing during quarantine? I'm cooking a lot. I've been baking chocolate cakes, eating chocolate cakes, giving chocolate cakes as gifts, and realizing how much butter and sugar goes into that stuff. I've also run about 200 miles since March, lost about 8 pounds, and that's it. That's about all I've been doing. I've been ordering Amazon a lot and playing with various toys, stuff that I don't really need, but that's how I have to keep myself occupied. I've also been connecting with friends when I can. The Africa story is both close to our hearts, so is close to both our hearts. Help me. So I've been doing a lot of remote work like yourself. Looking forward to being on your show. I cannot believe I'm in my jammies here talking to you. I feel like I should have a show now, and I'm going to call it Live at Home with Zane Verjee. Here's a sample. What do you think? I have one more show idea. It's called The Bright Side with Zane Verjee. Here's how it goes. What do you think?
What am I supposed to say after all of that? After seeing that foolishness, other than Zane is going to be with me in about 5 minutes over on Instagram. She's baking, she's running, she's clearly losing her mind in quarantine and is in her pajamas at an ungodly hour. Let's see if she changes out of her pajamas, shall we? By the time she makes it over to Instagram. And that does it for this week's Home with Isha Sesay. Tomorrow is Chop and Chill on Instagram. That is our opportunity to bring folks together to enjoy some African music, to support African businesses wherever they are, African restaurants, African businesses, African charities working on the continent. We do that on Instagram Live. It happens at 1 p.m. Pacific, so do join us for that. We will be back here with Home with Isha Sesay on Monday for a full show, and of course across all of next week, looking at the pandemic and how it's impacting Africa. So back with this show from Monday. So you won't see us again here tomorrow. Make a note. If you want to see me tomorrow, jump on Instagram for Chop and Chill at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is 8 p.m. GMT. Right now, though, why don't you come over to Instagram so you can see what Zane is up to? I cannot promise you coherent conversation, but I can promise you a lot of laughter. So if you're up for some laughter, come join me and Zane and hear us talk about life in quarantine, life after CNN, reinvention, new dreams, new hopes, new aspirations. We'll be talking about all of that and probably drinking wine also. So join us for that. I'm heading over there to Instagram. I hope you can join me. If you can't, I hope you have a safe weekend and hope to see you back here for Home with Isha Sesay on Monday. Stay safe, everyone. Thanks for watching.